Oh, yeah, that's it. Right, show's over. You've done that wrong. Right. Okay. Well, it's time for an interview. Before we move on to talking to Charlie, I just want to say a couple of very quick things. So, obviously, Charlie Landon is not without controversy. In fact, his appearance, as I said earlier, has generated more pushback and vitriol than other guests we've had on the show. Some of you even question why we'd even given him the opportunity to speak. If you want to see those comments, look at the Facebook page on Fire. Seriously, we're not talking about hosting Hermann Goering here. We're talking about someone from a world of general aviation with views. An approach, and his approach might be polarizing, and his views might be polarizing, but isn't that the point of discussion? We need to challenge ideas, not silence them. I know some of you have seen his videos and decided you don't like what he has to say, or even how he says it. Some of you do, by the way. Perhaps you feel his negative influence on general aviation, or even that his ideas could be dangerous. I don't know. But how can we understand or challenge the ideas if we refuse to listen? Why would you refuse to listen? I just don't get that. So your criticism, if you want them to carry weight, and if you've in fact got some criticisms, then you need to inform them by a better understanding. Tonight isn't about agreeing with Charlie. It's about hearing him out, asking him questions, and perhaps refining our own viewpoints, whether that's in agreement or opposition. That's how meaningful discourse should work, isn't it? I don't know. I think it is. This is a mini rant it's turned into. It shouldn't have done, but it has. So this is how we grow. I know. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. This is how we grow stronger as a community. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to show you a short video introducing Charlie's YouTube channel. We're going to have a chat with him to see how he got here, to give us some perspective on it. Then I'm going to show you another video, which has got some clips from some of Charlie's flying and some of the flying that may have caused some of the opinions that are out there. And then we can all talk about it, and it's your chance to engage. So feel free to comment, ask questions, challenge him. Keep it civil. There's no place for personal abuse here. And if you're going to make any personal abuse, you'll either get binned or you certainly won't get highlighted. So anyway, we need to learn to agree or disagree with a bit of integrity and respect, because I think that's a good thing, rather than jumping on and piling in. So here we go. Let me just find that first video. So this is the first one. Here you go.
Welcome to another flying vlog with me, Charlie Landon. This is Charlie's personal vlog channel, where I share my very long and continuously looking like it's going to take even longer story about my journey in an attempt to build up enough time, money, experience to fly my family around the world in a seaplane one day.
Hello, Charlie. Let me just move you up to the top left position and then make you big. Thank you very much for joining us, Charlie. I hope you're doing well. That was a few clips put together from your vlogs that are out there. So I wonder, just for kind of perspective, you could tell us kind of like how you got interested in flying, how long you've been flying, and kind of where you are currently with your flying, really. And then once you've done that, we'll play the second set of clips, and then we'll talk about all the other stuff.
Hi, well, thanks very much for having me, guys. It's exciting, and yeah, some of what's going on in the comments has been a bit bewildering to me, so I'd be good to talk that through. I started flying because I got divorced, and I had it was an amicable no kids divorce back in about 2008, and I had suddenly had a bit of time and more money on my hands than I'd had before, and I thought, oh, I've got something to do, and it had never been something that had actually been on my list, but the thing I love above all else is freedom to choose, freedom to travel, etc. And to me, that was the appeal of aviation. Learning to fly was just the freedom of aviation. And I learned to fly. I started at Blackbush, but ended up actually getting my license at Enstone with Oxfordshire Sport Flying, Ray Brown rig, which was a wonderful place to learn to fly. Lots of uncontrolled airspace around there. And I kept it up. I wanted to keep it up. I thought it was really exciting. And I very quickly discovered that some pilots, when they get their license, they just stay within a comfort zone and they never leave it. And there are other pilots who then begin the long journey of extending outside your comfort zone. It's only ever been something that's been as an amateur hobby, just something for fun, personal enjoyment, the joy of flying. I didn't expect half of the incredible benefits that you get in terms of personal development, decision-making skills, the things that you learn about flying that you can apply in the rest of your life. I had no idea about any of that stuff. I think anyone who runs their own business should definitely go and try and learn to fly, because I think there are massive parallels between the skills you learn having to fly and the skills you learn running a business, which is where you've got to run everything at the same time and you can't pull over and stop. You've got to keep going no matter what. And then someone gave me a book. and I still to this day wish I could remember who it was, about seaplanes. And I was lying in the bath reading it, which I don't remember because I don't actually have bath very often. I normally have a shower. And there was this line in this book that said, there are places in the world that can't be reached any other way than in a seaplane. And that was it. I was absolutely hooked. And I thought I must get my seaplane rating. And in 2014, January 2014, I got my seaplane rating in Lake Como. I then discovered there wasn't an extraordinary amount of seaplane flying opportunity in Europe, and what there was very expensive. So I went over to the Greenville seaplane flying in September in Maine, which I just turned up alone. And I've never witnessed such hospitality. I was welcomed as a long lost stranger into the seaplane aviation community over there. And that's been where I've actually had some of the most fascinating times. But sadly, I mean, the main reason for my YouTube channel is to document my efforts. So one day, hopefully, if I get enough time and enough money and I haven't got too old and my kids haven't got too old, I'd love to fly my family around the world in probably something like an amphibious twin otter. That's the dream. And I'm just enjoying the process of working towards that. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but it gives me a direction for everything I need to do. I want to get my full instrument rating. I need to get my twin. I'd like to get my commercial, my CPL. In fact, I'd done all the studying and I had my exams ready to go, and then COVID cancelled the exams. I never got back to it. And you know, the magic about flying, you know, and as life gets on, you get faster and you get kids, things start to get lost in the mists of time. And I wanted to start recording it because it's just such a lovely thing. And there's amazing days where you have lovely days. And I'm so glad I did. And that's my first reason for doing it. And it was also because in my working life in the property sector, I needed to get good at doing YouTube. So my personal channel, which isn't expressly an aviation channel, it's just my personal video diary, was kind of like a practice ground for it. And you know, as people could tell from the beginning, I didn't take it very seriously. I didn't take the channel very seriously. There was no professionalism in the production or anything. It was just chuck some GoPros up, dump the footage into something, give it to an editor because I can't edit videos to save my life, and see what came out of it. And I was as surprised as anybody when it started to get followers and views. And then I got, you know, immediately I got both sides of the hornet's nest. I got this sort of ferocious new group.
I'm gonna stop you there before you go too far down that road, because we've got some other clips and then we'll come back to that. But just bring us up to date, because I think you fly a couple of interesting airplanes briefly, and then we'll move on to the next bit.
Yeah, I had one of those things, right place, right time, absolute, just the stars aligned, and I was able to get my hands on my own Cessna 182, which a complete fluke happened to be one of those very rare ones with a canard conversion on it, which gives it a 30-knot stall speed, so very, very short takeoff and landing distance, but still a full 4 adults, fuel, luggage, you know, and sort of 6-hour endurance. So it's an incredible all-round plane, and those canards just make it perform even better than the 182 already does. Yeah, and I've got a share in a Cessna 180 on floats in Norway, which I share with a handful of German airline pilots. And that it's a 1950s plane that spent its entire life in Norway in salt water. It's amazing, and there it is, 60, 70 years later, still going strong. It's had quite a lot of maintenance done to it, but flying around the fjords in Norway is just the most magical thing. It's incredible.
You'd think it would have dissolved by now.
Yeah.
Normally, when you see ads for Cessna 180s, it's like never been anywhere near salt water, and you know full well that probably has. Anyway, okay, so the background, you know, you learnt to fly in the UK. Was that back in 2002? Did you say?
No, I actually got my PPL in 2010.
2010. Okay, great. So 2010, so 14 years ago, you got a share in the 182. Sorry, you own the 182, the Peterson conversion, isn't it?
That's right.
And the share in the 180. Right, let's play your second set of clips. Here you go.
So I wanted to check what the conditions are at the moment. I'm pretty sure it's pretty windy up there, but the clouds and stuff, how are they looking?
Yeah, it's not too great here at the moment.
This is super frustrating, but also getting a bit dangerous.
November 20 Sierra Exeter.
November 20 Sierra, go ahead.
Have you just spoken to Doug Swine there, whether the cloud is on the ground and visibility is 500 meters?
The fact that I'm standing here today, recording this video, with this plane still in one piece, is down to pure, unadulterated luck. that I emerged unscathed from an emergency situation that was 100% the makings of my own stupidity. Merrifield Military Air Base. Suboptimal to say the least. Feeling very stupid. A big lesson learned today about thinking, oh, I can always just turn back to my alternate. Contrary to the belief of many of you, I don't care what anyone thinks. If you worry about what other people think, especially strangers, you're doomed to misery. It never ceases to amaze me how many of the haters think I give a flying hoot what they think.
Okay, before we go down that road, I should just point out to people the fact that, you know, there are clips of I think 2 or 3 different videos in there, and they may or may not relate to each other, and it would be very easy to take the individual bits out of context. So, you know, beware of those clips that I just kind of gathered quickly today to try and kind of. I think effectively there was one flight that, if people don't know about it, here was was a flight from Earl's Colne to Dunk as well that ended up in Merrifield. So which we can talk about in a bit. So basically, I guess the questions that I'm going to kick off with, and you kind of answered one of them already, which is, you know, why do you actually why do you have a YouTube channel? But I think we've kind of done that. Perhaps more interestingly, why do you think that you have that you have a bit of a Marmite side, that some people love you and some people aren't entirely in love with you, should we say? And you know, do you ever sit there in those rare baths that you take and go, oh, I wonder if they've got a point or not? I mean, how does it affect you?
Always, 100%. My first reaction always is, are they right? That's always my first reaction, which is why I say I always welcome constructive criticism. And honestly, as a direct result of that YouTube channel, I have learned stuff I didn't know before as a result of people giving feedback, people giving constructive feedback. And I don't think anyone would disagree, right, that sharing our mistakes, whether it's in the hangar with other pilots or whether it's online, is useful. Sharing that experience, sharing mistakes is useful for other pilots. And I get comments, as many privately as I do publicly, from around the world, thanking me for sharing these mistakes and saying these videos are saving lives. And I just think about how much value I got from watching other YouTubers, how much I've learned from watching other YouTubers who are brave enough to share their mistakes, because by God, you need to be. Right? You need to have absolute rhino hide if you want to go and share your mistakes, because there are literally seemingly hundreds of people just waiting to make themselves feel better by making you feel worse, rather than coming to you with anything constructive. And I know that this negative subset is a minority because of the majority of constructive feedback I get. And not just constructive feedback. I mean, I've had, the most notable one was after I published that video of trying to take my son Archie flying in Norway in the seaplane. And it was a case of not get there-itis, it was get up there-itis, because we'd been planning for so long. We'd flown to Norway, there was some time, money. We only had a couple of days, and the day was getting away from us. Oh, I should never have gone. I should never have taken off that day. And an American commercial pilot who was also a GA pilot, owner, and instructor, and he'd been flying his own 180 for, I don't know, 30 years or something, said to me, hey, look, have you got time? I'd love to have a video call with you. Let's run through what happened. And he just, you know, and that's just one example of the kind of thing that happens on this YouTube channel. I've had so many magical offers and experiences like that I got to fly the A380 simulator as a direct result of the YouTube channel. I have a standing offer to go and fly a 737 simulator as a result of the YouTube channel. And I get so many people who generally tend to send the messages privately, including, and this is the salient point, when I published that Merrifield emergency vlog, and then, you know, people sort of kicked off in the comments about it. Like, if I hadn't published it, you'd never know about it. Why would you? You know, I'm publishing it there so that people can learn from the massively stupid mistake I made. I had people sending me their own video clips saying, these are the clips of my mistakes I wish I could publish, but I can't because I'm afraid of the reaction online. And I know pilot owners in this country, right? My friends of mine who own planes and fly them, who film their flights, and they go, Charlie, why do you share your videos? You just open yourself up to such punishment. Because I think based on the feedback I get, the value that they provide is far, far, far more important than some people who don't like it. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I've asked people said, oh, he breaks the rules. And I said, what rules have I broken? Like, what rules have I knowingly, consciously broken? Because some of them make me sound like I just go out there and don't care what I do and which is just ridiculous. And whenever I ask them, I get nothing. I don't get a response. So it's, as Bob Hoover said, the most important thing that any aviator can do is encourage others to want to fly. Well, that's one of the reasons. That's another reason I have the YouTube channel, right? And it's such a sad indictment on the effects of that small minority in the community, that their existence is actually preventing other pilots from doing YouTube, which might do something to go towards helping general aviation be expanding rather than contracting, with airfields closing down and flight schools closing down. And I think and by the way, when I say the negative people, I don't mean people criticizing decisions or flying. That's why I publish the mistakes. I publish the mistakes to stimulate discussion, because we all learn from it, myself included. The negative people are not the critics. They're the ones making personal attacks that don't appear to want to do anything other than have me taken down, which is why I've had, the CAA has told me that I've just got obvious haters trying to get me taken down and filing reports to the CAA against me. The CAA have just discontinued, said, don't worry, we're not going to take any further action on this. It's obviously just sour grapes. So, I think that if you're, and I've had the whole spectrum of feedback. I've had people being too nice, generally too nice, and when I deserve criticism for it, right? I've had people being really positively constructive, offering to take me flying in their plane, offering to come and fly in my plane as an instructor, offering to meet up and talk, whatever. And that is just incredible generosity, which is another reason for doing the YouTube channel, because it opens me up to that, which I wouldn't get those offers. And then you get the ones who are quite harsh critics, and I don't have a problem with that. That was a really stupid mistake. Here's why. And they explain it and they lay out their reasons. That is massively valuable constructive criticism and feedback, which I learn from. And I have, right? And I've got no problem with that. But when people just want to sort of have a go at you personally, which I don't care about, and yes, it would be easy for me to not engage them and just walk away and go, oh, I'm just going to ignore the trolls. But ignoring the trolls is why there are no other YouTubers doing this, and why existing YouTubers that I talk to say it's so unpleasant, it sometimes makes us question whether we're going to carry on.
So a couple of questions that I'd ask as a result of what you just said, really. One, you spoke about your flight with Archie in Norway. I watched that video when it came out. I haven't watched it recently. I didn't reference it in the clips. And then the kind of what you might call the Merrifield flight, should we say? I mean, those flights were at different times, and they were probably, one could argue they were two flights that probably shouldn't have taken place, or at least should have diverted earlier in the Merrifield one. Was that a kind of, when you were thinking about that, did the flight with Archie come into your? Do you know what, there are signs that sometimes it's not destined to go flying, and there would be different reasons for it all. But,
well, guess what? There are no videos of the flights I choose to not do.
Well, and that's my second point. You're right there. My second point is one could be forgiven for, if you get that little YouTube notification, ping, Charlie Landon's just uploaded a video or something. Yeah, you could almost think, if you look, and it's not, I've sort of done a little bit of analysis, and it's not super fair, but you could almost think Charlie Landon's just like, I wonder what's gone wrong now, kind of thing. And that's
completely fair, because when you upload uneventful flights, even I don't want to watch those. I took off, everything was fine, I landed. Who's going to watch that? Why am I going to spend time and money editing, producing, and publishing that video? There's nothing to learn from it. That was nice, land. These videos take real time and money to publish, and so that I have other videos that are unpublished because they're unpublishable because of the negative community. So, and also, they're edited to provide. And I've heard other YouTubers have to explain this, and it's like occasionally I upload real time flights, because I think that I've been told that those are quite useful for students who want to study, just actually see what it was like, a real-time, uncut, full-length flight, watch the whole thing. But if you think that all of my aviation content on YouTube is all of my flying, then of course it comes across as though I'm an absolute disaster area. Because also, the flights that get the most views are the ones with the worst mistakes. And before anyone thinks that I'm doing this for YouTube views and money and likes, please, I have struggled to break 50 quid in a month of YouTube ad revenue. There is absolutely no financial upside to doing it whatsoever. So, yes, of course, and I've seen other YouTubers have to go. I wish I didn't have to explain this, but obviously this is edited, and obviously I have done the checks. I mean, it beggars belief that some of the people commenting could be pilots and say the things they do. I mean, I genuinely hope that some of the people making those comments cannot possibly be pilots, because if they're making comments that stupid and they're flying, that to me is worrying. But I assume there are a lot of people who aren't pilots. There are lots of simulator pilots that never actually fly, and they get the comments as well. And you never know who they are. You never know who these people are. So, but my point is, constructive criticism is the most valuable thing I get out of that YouTube channel. Any value that other pilots might find from my mistakes is a way that I can give back to the aviation community what I have gained from it, from other people's YouTube videos, right? If I can share mistakes that help other people avoid them, why wouldn't I? Well, apart from the idiots that want to be personal about it, it makes sense. If you've got something valuable that's shared to help other pilots, then you should, like Bob Hoover said. I mean, but the trouble is that the online community, the armchair ones, are probably much more responsible for the decline of general aviation in this country than they realize. Because, in the US, for example, there's a whole new generation of young pilots. It's wonderful to see it. There are lots and lots of YouTube channels and lots of people. You can see youngsters getting into flying and loving it, and doing it not because they want to be airline pilots necessarily, because the joy of flying, backcountry flying. There's silly, not silly at all. There's amazing planes with the big bush wheels, and they go off and they meet up for picnics and camping. And where's the UK version of that? I mean, I'm doing my best. But, the other pilots don't want to share it because of the reaction that you get. And so, even objectively looking, how is that reaction constructive or helpful? Now, there have been a couple of people who have sent me very harsh criticism by private message. And to me, that is credible, because they're not grandstanding. They're not trying to make themselves look good in the comments. They feel strongly enough about whatever I've done to send me a private message, and they put time into it. And I will always read those carefully, and I will always respond to those carefully. Whether it's like, thanks very much, hadn't thought of that, or actually there's a couple of things you didn't know, or I disagree because, but they're always constructive. So, but when it's public, it's just grandstanding. When it's public and it's not constructive, it's just grandstanding. It's to be ignored. But sorry, there's one more final point on this, which is important. Whenever you stand up to bullies in life, the first thing they do is try and tell you to shut up. It's the first thing they always do. Shut up, sit down, no one wants to hear it. And that's been happening to me recently. And I've been saying, well, this is why there isn't more aviation support in the UK, because every time someone wants to actually push back against the negativity, you guys all pile on.
Well, I hope I'm not being a bully.
No, you're not. Not at all. This is wonderful.
Can you shut up? But I'm only saying that because this software means I can't see any of the comments. But Ed, I don't know if there's anything in the comments that we can put out.
There are a few. Cameron Bunt says, great to share mistakes, but there's a staggering amount of errors of judgment or dangerous mistakes on the channel for one individual. Dan Smith, I did see one where you got refused en route access to airspace in, I think, Belgium, because you didn't have the correct transponder. That's lack of planning rather than getting caught out, right?
Mm-hmm. I actually didn't know. I didn't know I needed a mode Sierra transponder. It was just lack of knowledge on my part, not lack of planning. That was a flight to Norway. I'd done lots of planning.
GHO Flyer says, if learning from mistakes, how do you get 3 airspace infringements? A number so high, no one appeared to know how to deal with the CAA punishment. Presumably, you were the first.
No, I wasn't the first. And not only that, the reason that third one took so long for them to find me an instructor is because they revealed to me that the number of flight schools whose instructors have airspace infringements mean that those flying schools can't be used to provide remedial training. So I'm not the only one to have had 3. I'm certainly the only one to have had 3 and shared it and published it, because actually, it's the airspace infringements are to be avoided at any cost, obviously, but they are also the fear of the CAA is misplaced. The CAA's conduct in all 3 of those cases was completely fair, constructive, and positive, and said all we want to do is try and help reduce further instances of mistakes. And they couldn't have been fairer about it, and that's why I published it, because there is this fear of the CAA among a lot of pilots, and yeah, there are lots of other frustrations on the admin side. That's a separate point. But on this, I actually, one of them contacted me personally, someone on the CAA on a mobile, and he just said, "Look, I wish everyone else was as constructive as you have been in the handling of these infringement situations." He said, "You've been forthright, forthcoming, you've provided us with everything, you haven't tried, you've just been," and he said, "That makes this so much better, and I wish more people were like that, because we're not here to take anyone's wings away."
In terms of learning from mistakes, because I think we can all say that aviation is great when you can learn from mistakes. Do you think maybe some pilots and some of the comments that come out are because people feel that like you're not learning from your own mistakes?
Well, I mean, if whether or not I'm learning from my mistakes is important enough to them to actually want to ask the question, then I would expect them to go, obviously his YouTube channel is only a very small snippet of less than 5% of his flying. We can't judge 100% of flying based on less than 5% of it. Let's ask some reasonable questions. Charlie, what instructors do you use? What do they say? Because, I mean, guys, there have been times when the pushback on the YouTube has been so great, I have gone to instructors and gone, am I missing something? Because there are people saying I shouldn't be flying. Can we go flying together? Can you tell me? And I've gone up with instructors, and more than one, like multiple instructors, and they've said, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. You're no better or worse than the other pilot. This is normal. And when I've had the offers of help online from other instructors and stuff, they've gone, don't let anyone tell you that you're the only one making these mistakes. Others are just too afraid to admit them. And that's true. What is the idea of learning from your mistakes? That, once you made the mistake, that's it, you never make mistakes again. Because those airspace infringements were all completely different circumstances. And that's why I did a whole video explaining it. Okay. And actually, the course that the CAA gave me after the second one, I wish they'd given me after the first one, because it was a brilliant course. The airspace awareness infringement course was fantastic, and I can't believe it's not part of the PPL exams. It was just great.
And to be fair, the infringement 1 and 2 were both. You said at the time about both things. You said, "Oh, I wasn't situationally aware."
So the first one was a very, very slight one, and I'd gone from flying 182s back into a 172 that didn't have autopilot, and I was just flying down to Leon Solent, I think it was, and I just lightly skimmed the side of Solent's airspace. It was, which was just careless. Yes, it was sloppy situational awareness. Take my wings away! I had bad situational awareness for 5 minutes. Take me down! Okay, but they sent me a letter, said, be aware, don't do again. The next one I did was much more serious, totally different, complete planning. It was a planning failure as well as a situational awareness failure on a route that I was familiar with going up to Earl's Colne, because I've got family up there. And I did a horizontal bust of London TMA, and farm. I was on a farm ballistics walk, and they told me, yeah, I mean, completely my bad. Right, and I was as horrified as anyone about that, and I welcomed the training that happened. The third one was an ATZ. It wasn't Class D or Class A or anything like that. It was an ATZ where a lower than forecast cloud base pushed me just into the top of Leon Solent airspace, and it was a result of one of my videos. Someone reported me to the CAA, so actually my own videos got me done for that one. But that ended up with one of the greatest days training I've ever had, where a CAA, one of the examiner, I got to spend the whole day with this guy, who's one of the loveliest instructors and most experienced I've ever flown with. We did dead reckoning training, 3 hours of dead reckoning training out of Compton Abbas. And he was the same. He said, I do this all the time. Do not think you're the only one. He said, here's my card, and I'd be happy to fly with you again.
I think. Carry on.
I know you're going to wind up. If we need to wind up, the couple of other standouts for me. You had one video where you talk about having a flight where you definitely had get there-itis, and it was a flight from Dunkeswell to a strip up near Sussex, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's
and you talked about the fact is, I absolutely must make it today. I've got get there-itis. I should go on top, but I'm not prepared to do that. And that was a great. There was some good learning points in that. I think that was the one that led to your third infringement, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then so you go, great, made the video, good learning points. There's the Merrifield one. Almost seemed like a rerun of that in a way. It's like it's another Charlie Encounters Nasty sketchy kind of get there-itis flight, and it just feels like that might be why people get so polarized.
That's a fair point. And what I would say is this: I can remember it was actually a very well-known and very highly respected instructor in this country who said to me one day when I said, "I don't think the weather's good enough to fly," and he said to me, "Yeah, you can make that decision. But if you actually want to keep on growing as a pilot, then you sometimes got to go, hang on, it's very easy to say don't go. Could you go? Could you go safely? Let's actually work it out and plan." He said, because if you just never fly because the weather might be a bit too on the edge, then you're never going to get anywhere, especially with the weather in this country. And so I was encouraged by instructors, both here and in the US, to get used to taking off on a journey, but having pre-planned alternates in the event the weather's worse than forecast. Now, I mean, the Merrifield one was a failure to land at the alternate I'd already pre-selected at Henstridge, and it was because as I did in that follow-up video, I had forgotten about the fact that my IMC rating was not available as a get-out card that day, and that's why I got myself boxed in. It was appalling decision making. Taking off wasn't the mistake, right? The first half of the flight, more than it was absolutely fine. In fact, no, it was stupid not to land at Henstridge. I passed Henstridge twice, and twice chose to keep going instead of land there. And there's just the inexcusable stupidity, and I have no defense against that. Does that mean I should never fly again?
I think we're not saying don't fly again. It's maybe.
Do you think I'm going to make that mistake again?
Yeah.
After what happened that day.
Will we see another Charlie video where it's like, oh, I made a bad decision. I had get there-itis on a bad weather day.
I'm pretty certain that my future of flying will not be 100% free from bad decisions. And I think any pilot who says they're never going to make a bad decision again is probably not a healthy attitude.
It's true. Yeah.
I have to say, I have a different view of aviation safety to many, which is that if you read an AIB report, or these days the modern equivalent, watch a YouTube video, and you end up saying to yourself, that's a stupid mistake, it would never happen to me, then you've missed an opportunity to learn. And that we should all learn from everybody else's mistakes, even if those mistakes look blindingly obvious to us while we're sitting there reading them or watching them, because there are sadly many thousands of pilots who are much better and much more experienced than us that have made mistakes that have cost them their lives. And so we all have a duty to ourselves and our families to learn from every single thing, and dismissing something as stupid is not at all a productive way of moving forwards, in my own humble opinion. My humble opinion is also that we've overrun by 7 minutes, which I promised myself I was never going to do. That's another bad planning error on my part.
That's okay. It's good discussion.
For which I apologize to everybody. So I'm going to wind up by saying, Charlie, thank you. You have been our most controversial guest in 4 years, and if there was an award for that, you would definitely win it. But it's been fascinating, interesting, and I love talking about aviation safety. I think the fact that videos are 5% of your flying or anyone's flying, they're probably 1% of my flying. It is very difficult. I know when people cherry pick bits and pieces in there, but that's not to say that their views should be dismissed, because they're, if they can keep the personal comments out of it, there's some good stuff in there. And we all kind of have to have those quiet minutes where we sit there and reflect. So thank you very much for participating. and maybe one day we could have a go at your airplane, because that sounds like fun. I've got a 182, but without the canards.
I'm a very dangerous
Yes.
pilot. You can't fly with me. Definitely wouldn't be safe.
There was some love for Charlie's. At least one viewer was saying, "I'm very envious of Charlie's Peterson stall."
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'd like
Right.
to thank all of those people who have sent me support. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Okay,
Charlie,
so thank you, Tom. Fancy Hangar.